What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck did I just watch? You are listening to What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at WTF Did I Just Watch? Thanks for joining us, and here's our latest episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? And today we are joined again by Pixie and her partner, Russ, and of course, John Paul, my compatriot. And we will be discussing The Peacemaker. It's a HBO Max TV series based off of 2021 Suicide Squad, written and mostly directed by James Gunn. And it's one hell of a show. So as I said, if you've not watched the 2021 Suicide Squad or the Peacemaker series yet, don't watch this podcast episode yet. Go watch that stuff, then come back and watch it. And then you can see how insane it was and how insane we are and why it's so lovable. I'm going to actually quickly throw it to John Paul because he's a huge James Gunn fan, as am I, but he's more the aficionado than I am. So, John Paul, you want to tell us about Trauma and where James Gunn came from?
I mean, yeah, sure. So James Gunn has been one of my favorite writer-directors ever since the first movie I saw him, which was Romeo and Juliet, which he wrote. Did not direct, but that's only because Lloyd Kaufman says he directs all his first features. But if you really go behind the scenes, he pretty much did all the directing of that movie, and Lloyd just put his name on it because that's Lloyd Kaufman. So yeah, the man is twisted and fun and creepy and cringy at times, but you're along for a hell of a ride. I mean, he also did one of my favorite Marvel movies that was Guardians of the Galaxy, which I know a lot of people like because they were like, oh, this space movie, what's that going to be about? And then it ended up being, ginormous hits with lovable characters like Groot, a talking living plant. So yeah, he's also done Slither, which is another great movie that he did, and Super, which most people are not a fan of, but I love it. And I think that
Did he do movie 43? Am I right thinking that?
No,
He didn't do movie 43?
He did not.
Are you sure? Google that.
I think he's in it, but I don't think he directed it, or maybe he did.
Did he write it though?
Now you're getting to make me second guess myself. I know he wrote both the Scooby-Doo movies.
You talk, I'll Google.
Which, if you're a fan of the wonderful Scooby-Doo movies, yes, with Sarah Michelle Gellar and her husband Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard, my new man crush, those are fun movies as well. But
when you say Super, are you saying that one with Rainn Wilson in it?
That's exactly the one I am referring to.
That was fantastically strange.
Again, most people are not a fan of, but what's hilarious is Super. There's a lot of Super in this show, which a lot of similarities that people don't realize. Super with Rainn Wilson, exactly.
Oh man, I didn't know that was
the Beazle section or the Beazle story of James Gunn. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Russ.
I was never aware that's kind of a little bit older, right? About 10-ish.
10-ish, yeah. I mean,
yeah. So not for a good little while, and it was something I caught maybe 3 or 4 years ago and watched it, and it was so strange. I couldn't take my eyes off it.
Exactly.
Where is it going?
That is James Gunn to a T. He is just like, I mean, again, Romeo and Juliet. Let's take the story of Romeo and Juliet and add some trauma flair and add a ginormous penis monster in the middle of it. So yeah, he definitely knows how to do R-rated things. He knows how to do family-friendly things. He's just so diverse. I mean, like I said, he wrote the Scooby-Doo movies, and those are so entertaining. And as we talk, well, I mean, I can mention right now, but his progression of going from where he was to where he is now is just amazing, just to see the way his career has gone. And like I said, eh, and then he gets movies like, oh gosh, what can I think? The one that he produced but did not direct, the Belko Experiment, which is freaking crazy.
That was
if
amazing.
you if you work at an office, you kind of know what it'd be like, wanting to murder your coworkers. So, and then he also did what I call the Dark Justice League. Why can't I think of the name of that movie right now? That's it. Yeah. So that's another crazy, crazy movie. So I mean, he knows how to do things in such an interesting and fascinating way. But on that note, let's talk about Peacemaker.
So just to be clear, when I interrupted Russ, so a movie 43, James Gunn wrote and directed Beazle, that part of it. So he did have a stake in it, but
Okay,
not all of it, because there's a whole bunch of different writers and directors in it, which is amazing.
That's its own
Craziness in and of itself.
yeah.
It's an experience you have to be ready for. But yeah, so Peacemakers, we do have to kind of jump a little bit into Suicide Squad 2021, which has Peacemaker in it, introduces DC fans to Peacemaker, who was a very obscure hero villain from way back. I think the 60s is when he came out originally. Comic book fans, feel free to correct me. I love comic books, but I'm a casual reader of stuff. Like the only thing that I vaguely remember about Peacemaker is a little story they actually even tell in the series about him going after Kite Man. And I think the absurdity of Kite Man is why it's stuck in my brain, and like Peacemaker kind of fell out of it. But he gets introduced in the Suicide Squad, and he, even though he's in a squad of villains, ends up really kind of being the villain of that movie. Him and of course Amanda Waller, who is always kind of the villain of the Suicide Squad movies, but also is a badass character on so many levels. But yeah, so you get to meet him there, and then James Gunn was kind of fascinated by the backstory of this character because there is no development of him in the Suicide Squad movie. Like you get a little bit of background on almost every other character in it, but Peacemaker, you don't hear much. He's like kind of just a mirror of Bloodsport, so it kind of made James Gunn into wanting to write a backstory for him, or wanting to give him more depth. And when you listen to, there's a companion podcast that goes along with the Peacemaker series. I don't know if you've come across it, but it's called the podcast, which is a joke off of Eagly the Eagle, his sidekick. And James Gunn says that when he was thinking about making it, he really wanted to make a series like the 1980s Captain America series, which he's like, but he wanted to make it good. He's like, so he basically said that he loved it a lot when he was a kid. And of course, if you watch it now, it's terrible. It's so low budget, like bad costume. It's true 1980s. But if you watched it as a kid in the 80s, you still would love it because, that's what we had, the Hulk and that. And so that's what you get. And when you watch it, you kind of get that feeling where this is like Captain America gone wrong.
Yeah.
But that's a great description.
Yeah, and then that movie, I felt like they kind of, what you're saying makes me think they didn't have the idea of the show, the Peacemaker show, in their mind as they were making the movie.
I think as he was making the movie, it started to develop in James Gunn's mind.
Okay.
Because
it felt rather teed up.
The post credit was like, boom, teed it right up.
Yeah, that post credit
exactly
was definitely there. But even during the movie, the way they kind of left a lot of the shades of his character vague, almost felt like they were planning on filling that in elsewhere.
It may have been that they planned on killing him off there.
Right.
And then
could be.
This guy needs to quit. And John Cena, like, why on earth wouldn't we want more John Cena? He's delightful. He's a national treasure. He's just so fantastic. And one of my favorite parts in Suicide Squad is that little where they're going into the village and they're killing all these people, the wrong people. And it's Idris Elba and his exchange when they're like competing for kill shots. And he's like, what did he say? He's like, Yeah, it is when it's fucking dope as something like
Is it
just
Yeah, or nobody likes to
flashy
brag
or
or something.
Yeah.
Idris Elba says, and
dope as
yeah, John Cena
hell.
says when it's
It
dope
was
as
just so
fuck. Yeah.
quick. So quick. It's my favorite parts, really and truly, of any the James Gunn stuff, the Marvel stuff, or the DC stuff, is the banter. The banter is just mwah, just chef's kiss, so good and so funny. It reminds me kind of Kevin Smith's banter, but
Yeah, it's excellent. The timing and everything. I think a lot of it has to do with the actors he chooses and his own writing, but he
Oh,
also
yeah.
is like the director that allows his actors to keep going. And then
Yeah.
he'll just, cut the best versions of it and stick it in there. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
Russ, were you saying
kind of
something? Because I
era.
couldn't quite hear you.
Oh, this era kind of has that anti-hero kind of theme that's thriving right now with Deadpool and these other characters.
complicated. They're complicated,
Yeah.
and they're like shades of gray.
Right.
Nobody's really bad and nobody's really good anymore. We're
Or
all
redemption
like
stories.
kind of
that
shades of
thing.
gray, which is real life, really.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's one of James Gunn's favorite things to play with is the whole shades of gray thing. I don't think he really likes the whole, this is the good person and this is the bad person thing.
Right. Because it's not a thing.
And it's boring.
It is boring.
Yeah.
We've seen it a bunch.
And if you've ever played like in any kind of like Dungeons and Dragons campaign, the worst thing in the world is get stuck with like a paladin type character that it has to just like it ruins your whole fucking game.
Yeah.
And I
No,
won't
your
say it
character
ruins your
wouldn't
whole
do that.
movie, but it's harder to watch, and it's harder to build empathy and it's harder to understand other perspectives when you just have this view. So movies that expand your view, even when they may be seemingly silly, I am a huge fan of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially when they show growth, which I would say that like Peacemaker, especially, well, almost any of his movies will do this, but Peacemaker really just shows a progression of characters' growth. Like every one of the main characters in it, and even like you just see them grow. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just amazing. But and a lot of fun. And it makes you question a lot of things. And I'm a huge fan of all of that. And the other thing that James Gunn says that almost all his movies and shows basically feature is childhood trauma. Which,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe just because he's a Gen Xer and that's how we all coped.
That's
The man
how we
is
relate
fucked in
to
the
each
head.
other.
The man is fucked in the head, and he has always been fucked in the head. It's just, I don't know. Like I said, just through watching pretty much everything he's done to this point, I'm just amazed with his progression. I'm amazed how he could just do, like I said, just kind of every kind of genre and every kind of thing and just make it entertaining. And I think a lot of it has to do with something that, I mean, I know I've played around in my head, like the soundtrack of life. He, in my opinion, knows how to pick music
Oh
in
yeah.
Yeah.
everything he does. He just captures mood with music and it just fits. And it's just incredible. I mean, and he totally knocked it out of the park in this show with that opening. I mean,
Oh, yeah. We did a deep dive on it.
I
On
mean,
this song.
that opening song is so incredible. Like, like most streaming services, you want to skip the intro? No, I do not.
Nope.
I want to hear it again.
And see that choreography. That choreography was so fun. And they're being stiff and being people who don't know how to dance on purpose. You can tell because
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple of them, you can see them wanting to let loose. And no. Be
So
robotic. It's really
the
fun.
choreographer for this was Carissa Barton. And
Was it?
ends up being that Carissa Barton, just as a side note, is Alan Tudyk's wife. And which makes this even funnier is James Gunn is friends with Alan Tudyk, but when he hired Carissa Barton, he had no idea she was Alan Tudyk's wife. So it's like this whole funny, like 6 degrees of separation thing. And she listened to the song, she said just over and over again, like 50 plus times to do the choreography, which I'm sure, as you know, Pixie, anytime you do a choreography, that song is your life now. And so you cannot dance. And she had designed it with a couple thoughts in mind. One with being that most of the cast is non-dancers. Some of them
Yeah.
had dance experience and physical, you know, obviously physical experience, but she knew that they were not dancers. So she was not making a choreography for dancers. She was making it for this cast. And the idea was to get some of the stop motion of the comic book, you know,
Oh yeah.
screens itself, you know, the pow, the punch. And then the weird, like, kind of puppetry stuff was supposed to represent the butterflies taking your brain over. And then she wanted to put like a little bit of Charlie Chaplin in there when you see in the mop scene and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And each one of the actors they did dance. Now there was a couple places where they had like a stand-in, like for the old neighbor guy. If you pay attention to like the credit scenes, you'll see that he's sitting. So the person that's doing the standing dance up for him is not him.
Oh.
But he's in there doing the motions where he's sitting down, and they just spliced that in. I think they did an excellent job. But
yeah. That's
It is-
fun. I didn't know. We did a deep dive on the song. It was the Wigwams, and it was released in like 2010, right?
Yeah, 2010.
Because it was just such weird lyrics. I was like, what is throw your dog the invisible bone? And then I thought about it. I'm like, oh, that's a dick move.
Yeah.
People who are dicks throw invisible things for their pets.
I mean,
what else is
again,
fine about
it just fits.
Yeah. I've been going around the house singing, throw your cats the invisible ball.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
little
it was kind of a metaphor, I guess, for the whole Waller setting him up from the get-go. You know, in a sense, that same kind of dick move is throwing your dog an invisible ball.
Go get it. Diary's over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they start out, basically Peacemaker has had this miraculous recovery, and you know, from having been shot apparently in the clavicle.
Not
It
in the
looked
left
like-
side of the neck.
It
Yeah.
looked like
But
the
the
side of the neck.
clavicle.
Right, right.
But and having a building dropped on him. And I love the interaction between him and Jamal, the janitor.
So good.
Thing is, like, I've had conversations with people like this.
So unimpressed. There was no wow in him at all for Peacemaker. It's like,
Well, even the whole thing. Oh, you're that racist.
you're right. Yeah. When he finally
He's
does remember him.
He's like, I'm not racist. He's like, all I'm saying is that you should watch white people as well. And it's like, it's so funny. I love how James Gunn will put in these really relevant points,
Oh, yeah.
you know, in such a light manner that, you know, like, I think it's like tricking people into opening their minds.
Right.
It's aha moments that
Yeah.
I would call him. I mean, he's really good at that. And like I said, if you go back and start watching a lot of the stuff that he does, you start going, aha. And especially the very first episode of this show, how much is actually thrown at you and you're laughing, but then when you rewatch it a couple times, then you realize, okay, now I understand that. I mean, his setups are so great, and yeah, it's very clever. It's just a smart way of doing it without being preachy, without, you know, hitting somebody in the head with a frying pan, you know.
No.
And that's, I don't know, it's
But
what I
it's
love
great.
about it is what it does.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
especially, I mean, it's that scene was like the perfect example because you have your normal kind of typical conservative argument where, well, it's not that we're really picking on Black people and minorities, they just commit more crime. And then you have the counter argument, which is the truth, is we're not monitoring white people in the same way. We're watching, you know, making sure that these people do nothing wrong, and we're letting this whole group just go do whatever they want,
Oh, yeah.
and saying that these people are more responsible as opposed to actually just letting go of our bias, you know, and paying
Yeah.
attention to what's really happening. And it's just such a cleverly well done, simplified, quick argument where, you know, and then you have Peacemaker who's just going, you know what? All right, that's valid. I will do that.
Yeah. There's another point in there where they're sitting at the diner and he calls the waitress Sweet Cheeks. And I don't know if he's playing dumb on that when they like call out his misogyny, or if he genuinely does not know what he just said and like the connection there. I don't know. It's hard to tell with Peacemaker because is he that dumb and like
I think he's that dumb.
snowy, or
I definitely think he's that dumb. I think that was the whole point of the character, that he does have growth, like we've talked about. That in the beginning he just is like, it's going to go over my head, and
There's
he's just
some
kind of
social
set in these
nuance
ways. Yeah.
that he's not privy to.
nobody told him. He never had friends to tell him, dude, that you can't say things like that to
No.
people.
He had a shitty racist dad.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
what a
Encourage
get out
him
of
to
jail
say shit
free
like that.
card. You know? For James Gunn, he's got this character that's like morally questionable, and you're trying to lift him up into this anti-hero status. And then you have his like overtly racist dad that's just completely kind of gives him a pass. So you're like, oh, okay, that's why.
And then he forced him to kill his brother. So
Right.
like,
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. It goes back, like I said, to his characters. I mean, his dad in this show, I mean, played by one of the best character
Robert Patrick.
actors.
what a get, right? What a
I
get.
mean, he is the T2000.
Yeah.
That's where most people kind of know him, but he's done
Yep.
so much stuff. Like, I mean, random trivia. Most people don't realize that he was one of the henchmen in Die Hard 2. Yeah,
I didn't recall that. Yeah.
exactly. I rewatched it like while I was watching Peacemaker, and I just was like, and it was like, whoa, why didn't I ever know this? Stuff like that. And I mean, he's been in so much. Him and Jeff Fahey, I feel like, just show up in so many things
That you never realize.
that you never realize, because when they're the lead, they're great, but then they don't mind doing everything
Into
else.
the background and just
Yeah.
do their, which is funny
Yeah,
because
they
they're
can
very
blend
distinctive looking people.
still.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that. It doesn't have that Matt Damon as Loki feel to it.
Right. So, I mean,
Interestingly, this is actually the third pair up with Robert Patrick and John Cena. They were in The Marine, which I think
Oh.
might have been John Cena's first feature film.
I think
No.
you might be right.
And
Yeah.
Robert Patrick played the bad guy in that, one of the bad guys. And then they were in an episode of Psych together, which was a favorite TV series of mine.
Oh,
And you don't
What?
know this?
an episode of Psych.
Right.
I've
Psych's
watched
a
that whole
jam.
show. Like,
I think it was the one called You Can't Handle This.
okay.
Because John Cena
Very
kept
cool.
playing I can't remember people's names now because it just blanked. And it's been such a long time since I've watched the series. The main
John?
character's girlfriend, Jules.
Oh, Jules,
John Cena
yeah.
played Jules' brother, older brother.
Oh, right. Holy crap! Yeah, I forgot all about that.
So yeah. Which I again didn't realize until I was reading through it. I'm like, oh yeah, they were all
Yeah, I expected to see that guy more. The guy who played Sean, I can't remember his name, Rodriguez.
oh yeah.
I expected to see him more. I thought he was just so comfortable in front of the camera. I was like, hey, he'll probably be in more stuff after this show. Didn't see
Yeah.
him again.
But I think he went on to writing and directing a lot. That could be-
Oh, okay, that makes sense. I thought I saw him there. Here's my James Gunn tie back in here. I thought I saw him in the second Guardians movie as one of the that planet where they're all gold. I can't remember.
That
what
was John Crichton.
It was John Crichton though, but who
Oh,
looks
yeah.
a
That
whole
was
lot
Ben
like.
Browder. He pointed that out to me, and I was like, "What?"
I had to look it up because I thought that was James Roday from Psych. It's like
It's
that's-
Ben Browder. They have that face.
they have the same face. If
And
they're
the
all gold,
snarkiness,
so.
and yeah. Anyway, I
Oh, sorry,
like the
so-
fact that this series, a lot of the directors of the episodes were ladies or female presenting people. So I think that kind of he does that a lot too. I think he brings in he tries to bring in women and diversity as much as he can, I think.
Yeah, get perspective from all
cool.
angles.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was really cool that Hardcore is like his fiance.
Well, she became his.
Yeah, she
I
became
assume they were
his
seeing each other
fiancé.
beforehand, but after
Yeah.
the series finished
Yeah.
premiering, that's when
She-
they got engaged.
She
So
was
just
in
this year.
Yeah, she was in Brightburn. Not Bright. Is it Brightburn?
The
I don't know, I
Dark
barely
Justice
remember
League.
that.
Brightburn wasn't
Yeah.
her, I don't think.
No,
Elizabeth
she
Banks
wasn't the
starred
lead.
in that.
No,
Oh.
she was the teacher in Brightburn.
Okay.
Really?
shit.
I gotta rewatch that. That was
Yeah.
That
very
was
cool.
so good. I hope
Which
they go
again
somewhere with that.
is
And
another
Stephen
James
Emke
Gunn.
was in that too.
Yeah, it's another James Gunn produced project,
Of
and
course
and
it is.
and James Gunn
Yeah, the theme.
has said recently that the new Guardians Volume 3 will have several people from this show in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And apparently after he filmed it, then he told Marvel, by the way, they're also in a DC property. Oops.
Which I believe James Gunn might be the only writer director to do both Marvel and DC.
They
As
probably
a-
allow him to do. Everybody just allows him to do it because he's awesome.
Yeah.
And he brings his brother Sean along with him wherever he goes.
The weasel.
I mean, I love his
the
brother.
weasel.
Yeah.
I absolutely love his brother because I met him at a convention, like I want to say early 2000s. He plays a really ridiculous character in Romeo and Juliet. And that's what I first like.
As opposed to the non-ridiculous characters he plays. in it.
Well, once you see that movie, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, but he is so like, you see the energy he puts out and everything that he does, but he's just a goofball.
Is he as nice in person as he
Oh,
seems
yeah.
like he would be?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I mean, he gets the crowds, like if people are like in line and stuff, he'll just jump out of his table and start talking to people, and it's like, hey, what's up? Hey, it's just
Yeah.
I remember like there was like 3 people ahead of me in the line, and he just got out and said, okay, well, you 3 come over here, and they're like, what? And he just like just started autographing things like crazy, and he goes, these are yours, these are yours, these are... and like the cash lady's like, and she's like, well, they want free autographs, I'm gonna give them free autographs.
That's great.
Yeah, I understand that's the livelihood of these actors when they go to
Yeah.
conventions. So for somebody to just kind of like, okay, here you go, here, he just started handing them out to people. It was just like, cool.
He may not do that now.
Might not do it now, but still.
His autograph's probably like $40 now.
Yeah, maybe.
I know at Horror Hound, a lot of those were like 40 and up.
Yeah.
Well, so yeah, the bigger names you're looking at $75, $80, $100. So,
Yeah.
but people
But
got to get
I don't
paid,
know.
so.
I'm just, like I said, this show was so like, I don't know. I was excited and nervous when I saw this, when they said James Gunn was directing the Suicide Squad, but because I was not a fan of that original Suicide Squad.
No.
But I love Harley Quinn's Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought that was just great. So I'm like, I was thinking, well, what's going to happen now? Okay, you said that Harley Quinn's going to be in it, but then this person's not going to be in it. I'm like, how are they going to actually do this? And then when they said, we're going hard R on this, it made me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Because I knew James Gunn was like, okay, I got the candy store, I can do whatever I want.
I was a
kinda
little
like
mad
this
at him
show.
over Nathan Fillion, though.
I mean,
Who did it?
It was funny.
Spoiler
Oh, what a
alert, he's
character.
not really dead.
TDK.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, he may or may not show up in season 2, as rumored right now.
Nice.
Oh my God. I don't even know what I would do.
That was
Yeah.
such a great character.
Yeah.
His arms.
But again, that's how Gunn is, and Gunn loves like Nathan Fillion. I think he's one of his friends because he's showed up in so many of his different projects.
Well, if he's friends with Alan Tudyk, he's got to be friends with Nathan Fillion.
Yeah.
That's just like law.
That's true.
I love the fact that we brought Danielle Brooks, was Tasty on Orange is the New Black, and now I can never remember her name.
Bio. Leota.
Adebayo.
Which, fun
Waller's-
fact, Leota is actually James Gunn's mother's name.
Really? Oh, that's awesome.
But I'm sorry, Pixie,
But
go ahead.
I love her. I think she's fantastic. I loved her in Orange is the New Black. And I love the fact that she was married to a woman, and they kind of normalized it, kind of. There were parts where it was a little pointed out, but like it was pretty normalized for the most part, which was cool. Of course,
totally agree
Peacemaker
with
had
you.
something to say because he's a little misogynistic, but
Yeah, he's kind of perpetually stuck in the 80s too, which is
Right.
that vibe of,
yeah.
very hyper machoism and
Yeah.
T-tops and Camaros. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
But interestingly, though, John Cena made him omnisexual. Like that was
I
all.
know.
Like he,
What?
you
Well,
know,
I mean, you'd expect somebody, I don't know.
yeah, you wouldn't expect him to have gone that route. Like, because James Gunn
Right.
didn't write it in that way. But I think when John Cena was ad-libbing that scene with Harcourt in the bar where he's like, where he corrects himself and said, okay, well, I haven't had sex with a woman in 4 years.
Yeah.
And you could have just let that be like, well, he was in prison. So,
Mhm.
prison's prison. Yeah. But they went and ran with it to make him be,
And then they put him in the bed with
Vigilante and Amber.
Vigilante and
Right.
Amber, was that her name?
Mm-hmm. Which is
That was
funny. I
so-
remember the character's name's Amber because I was impressed that as a sexual interest, they put a woman that was not a traditional skinny babe, I mean, she's
Yeah.
beautiful,
Me too.
but she wasn't the traditional look that you normally see them go for. You know what I mean?
Right. That made me pretty happy too. I was like, this girl's a little thick. And
Yeah.
she's like,
And Adrian not breaking character. Like, if this was 3 years ago, I would have shot you both for that.
Face.
For smoking
Still with
that
the
joint.
mask on too.
my favorite interaction, like sort of little thing in the whole show was Vigilant Adrian and what's her Tasty, because I can never think of her name in the show. Their interaction when they're outside the jail, and they're talking. She's like, he's trying to convince her that he's not vigilante after he had his toe cut off, and he's like lipping, and she just goes, "You're not killing it right now, man."
He's
my
like a-
favorite. That's my favorite. One of my favorite interactions in the entire show.
It's so hilarious. Yeah. He keeps trying. She's like, and no, and you're not. He's like, I'm not killing you. I'm not
Punching
pulling
the
this
holes
off.
in his shoddy rice paper reasoning.
You're not killing it right now. You're not killing it right now.
Which
The
I guess
lines they gave her were great.
yes. And like I said, a lot of the cast ad-lib. So a lot of the greatness you're seeing is them taking what they were given and just going
Yeah.
balls out on it. It's amazing. But just a little point. So Freddie Stroma is who played Vigilante in the series, but he came late to the game. So they had filmed like 5.5 of the 8 episodes with another actor named Chris Conrad. And I guess it was just horrific creative differences is all you hear. It was like classic creative differences. And so they replaced him with Freddie Stroma. And then James Gunn went back and he refilmed every scene from those 5.5 that had already been filmed with Freddie Stroma. So you don't see Chris Conrad in it in the series. Though I don't know,
The
John Paul, you
opening.
said that he's in the intro, but I don't know. Like I tried to find out.
I believe from what I heard that he is technically still in the intro only because they wouldn't pay to re-record the intro. Warner
Mm,
There's
Brothers
a
did.
lot of camera movement going on in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the and I think he still might even be credited in.
Yeah, I think I do see
So-
that name
So I think he still might be credited, which means then he still gets
for the
something
line dance.
for yeah. So
But
let's talk a little about it. What was everybody's favorite moment about the show? I know normally we give a summary, but I feel we're doing good flows here. Let's talk about everybody's favorite moment of this show. Pixie, you kind of touched up on what you like, but what was your kind of?
Oh boy, howdy! Hang on, I'm gonna have to go through the Rolodex here. If you want to go first,
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
My favorite, absolutely favorite moment of this show when they do that whole John Cena. You could have picked anybody else but
Yeah.
my dad.
Yeah.
You could
That
have
was a good
picked
one.
Papa Smurf, G.I. Joe, Shipwreck. And okay, I'm an 80s kid. I'll freely admit it. That scene just had me rolling. And then they released the outtake of that scene. So much so that my younger brother's never watched this show. He doesn't have HBO Max. I sent him that scene and that clip. And he was just like, okay, I signed up for HBO Max. I watched this show. You're right. It's hilarious. It's probably one of the best shows I've seen in a long time. Just because that scene, he's just like me. He was like, just the way he just was like, just so quick about it. I mean, I'm laughing now. It just made me laugh so hard. I was like, oh gosh, so good. And again, I mean, maybe in the 80s I was kind of a pro wrestler fan, but not really. And John Cena, I knew of him. I mean, when I first saw John Cena, I said, did Matt Damon and a wrestler have a child and this is it? Because that's what it reminds me of. But I mean, lately he's just been killing it. Like, I watch Wipeout with him hosting, and Nicole Byers. It's absolutely hilarious. So I mean, I kind of fall in love with him. I kind of accidentally this week got the John Cena haircut from the show because the lady went too short. But that scene is phenomenal. So who wants to go next?
Still having trouble narrowing it down to one, but I would say it would be something regarding Eagly. I'm pretty sure there was just like some moments that kind of got me unexpectedly, from an interaction with CG. You don't like, but it often is with me now that I think about it, because you can do so much with CG. You can build in the moment. You can make the moment perfect digitally, but very few people get it right though. And there was so many cases where he comes back with the squirrel and John Cena's like rationalizing it with him. He's like, I'm not going to eat it. No, it's very nice though. It means a lot to me.
Thank
you. You can have it. And the other interactions that involve Eagly, like where they're trying to get him back into the car and he's like, crinkle a bag, he'll think you have chips. And like, that's his siren's call.
And it's a raptor. Yeah. Like, it's a legit raptor. When you really put it into perspective, a pet eagle is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But amazing.
Yeah.
I like that Eagly at the beginning, in the intro, when he just does a little hop.
And then
every time that just makes me laugh. I don't know why, because he's like hop.
So cute. And the hug. The
Eagly
hug.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Dad, get him. Get a picture. Dad, quick, get a picture. So good. So good.
Yeah.
So Jenny, what's your favorite moment?
So it's kind of split between two, one with dialogue and one without. And the dialogue one, I'm paraphrasing and not getting it exactly.
No, go ahead.
But it's when Leota basically, it's the whole scene where they're talking about Goff having gotten into the cop's head after the jar broke. And Vigilante refers to her as Oriental, and Peacemaker corrects it to Asian, and he says he doesn't know why. And then they, Hardcore explains why. And then he's like, all right, fine, fuck. It seems like a, snowflake bingo card. And like Adebayo comes up and says, basically my favorite little paraphrase there. Oh, the horror of being like a white heterosexual man in the United States who suffers the unspeakable horror of occasionally having to substitute one word for another.
So good.
I love how it just calls that shit out. Like, It's such a trauma, the way people act, like it's so hard to do that. He's like, just right there, just jokingly putting it into perspective. I just love it. So like that line is so perfect, in my opinion, that whole scene. I love it a lot. And my other one with no dialogue is just after the butterflies take over the police station and they have the scene where they're all trying to smile. All the different fucked up smiles, and I could just see the actors going to a mirror going, okay, like what's the most fucked up smile I could do? And just the different like
yeah. There was the tall cop, the guy who was the acting chief at the moment. Oh god, his face in that scene
is horrible.
I had to rewind it a couple times. It was classic.
Tell me, when you saw him smiling, did you not think that like they lost a terrible opportunity by not casting this man to play the Joker at some point? This was fucking perfect.
Yeah.
And the way he played the character actually was very fucking perfect for a Joker character, in my opinion, as well.
They should go back and do a biography about the making of the Adam West one, Batman, and cast him as the guy who played, I can't remember his name right now.
Was it Cesar Romero that played
Cesar
the Joker
Romero.
in the
Cesar
60s?
Romero.
They should cast him as Cesar Romero.
Oh, that would be good.
Yeah. He had a great post-credit scene in this Peacemaker show.
Oh my
was
God, he had
trying
two great
to,
post-credit scenes, but yeah.
much like Vigilante with his, sociopathic kind of lack of any type of emotional response. He was like trying to dial in being a human person that had empathy. It was really well done. And it was the perfect like kind of exclamation point for the episode too, because it wasn't too, post-credit scenes, I think they're just such a little niche thing that when they're done right, they're just perfect. But it has to be that kind of irrelevant, but still very like entertaining, like, oh my, yeah, that's what happened when the camera panned away from that. That's great.
I feel like a lot of the post-credit scenes that Gunn especially does.
Pixie, I can't quite hear you.
I think a lot of the post-credit scenes that James Gunn does is snippets of the personality of the character, like Adrian, that we just kind of want to see more of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want more Adrian for just a second, and he's just so like hilarious, just his thought process.
Yeah.
So I think they're so good for that.
So I was
totally
reading
agree.
that James Gunn had deliberately made sure to put post-credit scenes for every episode because he wanted to reward people that watched through the whole credits. So he was like, "Wait, if you're going to do it, I'm going to give it to you." And boy, did he give us excellent post-credit scenes.
Mm-hmm.
The one after Locke has the butterfly in his head, and they're doing the press conference where he's talking about cleanliness being next to godliness. And if you watch the background, there's one actor who's playing a cop in the background who cannot keep his shit together. And I don't blame him. I don't think I'd have been able to, but he keeps doing this like he's scratching his face in the scene, trying not to. But his eyes are all like.
It's got to be so hard to be an extra on any of this.
Yeah.
Because it's just so funny. So funny.
I totally agree.
I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be like,
No.
You'd have to try to not pay attention, but you'd feel like you were just missing out on a golden opportunity.
No, you can't react if you're not paying attention.
Right.
You're supposed to react as an extra a little bit.
Yeah, I have to say, like, I adore Vigilante though. Like, I didn't think I would like a character like this, but he is so genuine, so fun, so just honest in what he is, that it's fucking hilarious. Like even like the whole, and the way people interact with him, that's what I really love. I like how like James Gunn didn't make people pick on him. You know what I mean? Like aside from Peacemaker picking on everybody, there's like even the scene where he's just the bus boy and he's doing his famous butt dance, which by the way, John Paul, for some reason made me think of you.
Because I do butt dances, okay? I'm sorry.
Why are you happy? Because she's getting an abortion.
And the poor guy, his coworkers just straight face with him and just, okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to get back into the restaurant.
But doesn't
this shift, man. Just trying to get through this shift.
Yeah. And the one I like the one scene with Adrian where he was they were talking about the high school interaction with him where he was like and how John Cena used to give everybody nicknames based on their dicks. And he says he's talking about the trauma that John Cena gave his brother, that Peacemaker gave Adrian's brother. And then they move right into, oh yeah, no, he had a nickname for me, but he was like, I didn't care because I don't have emotions like people do.
Yep.
Let's just hit the nail on the head and get that out of the way, and then now you know who Adrian is.
Yeah, and I think my other favorite scene with him being like clearly like what he is like the whole scene at the vet's office where they're like, okay, so you'll have no problem with killing people, but them being injured by duct tape is where you draw the line. And he's like, thinks about it.
Thanks.
He goes, yes. Like,
Yeah.
yes, you've got it. That's correct.
I like this scene with him in the jail when he sits down and he like tries to egg them on to like fight.
I loved it.
It's so good. It's just so good. And you can tell he genuinely feels that way about like racism and things like
Mhm.
that. He just like has this bring it look on his face, and it's just gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Like he's so happy to be fighting them and beating the shit out of them.
Right.
Well, I think the other funny thing is the
Without
contrast about how Adrian Chase looks versus the level of badassery he actually possesses.
Yeah.
Because when you see him walking through the prison cell, this person looks like fresh meat for the prison community. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just looks like he's basically gonna be ass raped left and right. That's what you
Yeah.
get. But he's still walking tall with confidence despite this demeanor of, so he has this demeanor of confidence, but his looks speak differently to it. And then as soon as he gets in a fight, he's like, boom, I got you. And he just decimates them.
Yeah.
To the point where I'd say that Peacemaker's dad was actually afraid of getting in a fight with them.
Probably.
Yeah, without his
Probably,
suit. Yeah. Yeah. He had, without all those pesky emotions, he knew how to really push their buttons. He wasn't afraid of anything. It's like, what do I have to do? I have to piss these guys off to the point where they attack me. Okay, that's easy enough. And just hit home runs on every single person.
Yeah. I'll have to admit though, it was the scene where Peacemaker's dad goes in the prison and then like he harasses the one guy to move out of the bench. And then you have all the neo-Nazis, Aryan supremacists show up and do the whole Hail White Dragon thing.
Mhm.
It was hard to watch.
Yeah.
It made me sick to my stomach. It was, and then actually all the elements they did it were a little too close to reality for me. Like if you've ever,
Oh yeah.
it was a lot, like the 14 words license plate, the white trash trailer fight, just the look
Mhm.
of the people that were being the white. I was just like,
Yeah.
Like I said, that's the James Gunn. Like he can make you laugh and cringe all at once at times. So it's
Yeah.
on par for him. So like I said, there were episodes that were a little tough. Like I totally agree with you in this show that I was just like, yeah, it's a good show, but
Yeah.
what?
I don't think I
South
think
Park
the
has
fact
that
that he,
kind of feel.
Yeah.
I
Where you're
think
like,
that he had that realism made it good. But
Oh yeah.
sorry,
Yeah,
Russ, I keep
definitely.
interrupting you.
oh no, you're fine. Yeah, South Park has that kind of feel where they're always looking for that edge. They're always pushing the envelope past its point, and it's gonna be funny, but you won't really want to laugh at it. Like
Right.
if you dissect it too much, you're like, oh yeah, no, that's not really fun. But when it's presented in this kind of quick and hapless, was seemingly hapless and just kind of just joking kind of jabbing, it's hard not to get like a little bit of a laugh out of it, but not the racism stuff obviously in Peacemaker, but in general, that kind of envelope pushing kind of situation where you're testing the boundaries of how can I push the viewer to the edge, make them maybe want to turn away, but
Yeah.
not want to miss the next second that comes after that or something like that. Yeah.
I think a lot of that stuff too is like they're trying to push the like learning on you.
That too.
You're
yeah.
laughing
Yeah.
at this, but you're uncomfortable. Think about why you're uncomfortable about this
Mhm.
for a second. That
No,
kind
I
of thing.
agree that think that and again that's what Peacemaker's character, like you said before, his development of being like a piece of shit basically.
Yeah.
At the beginning, and then you kind of like rooting for him at the end. I mean, it shows that there was growth. It shows that you kind of cared for him finally at the end when everything goes down. So, like I said, that's really why I overall really enjoyed this show, the way just the progression of all the characters and growth and everything. Even the nerdy guy, behind the scenes that we haven't really talked about much, which is, it's just cons.
Oh, you mean
yeah,
Diebeard?
yeah,
That was so sweet when he finally admitted through the earpiece that he does dye his beard and like
Exactly.
why. It was like,
yeah.
yeah.
And then even Peacemaker's face where you can see him kind of like,
yeah.
another learning moment. He was starting to understand the impact of him haranguing this guy with the name Diebeard really had. Yeah. And the funny thing too is economists, ends up being kind of like the unsung hero of the whole thing,
True and true, time and again. Yeah, taking out the judo master.
He killed a gorilla with a chainsaw.
That's right.
A butterfly gorilla.
Yeah, with a chainsaw. And then Adrian was jealous.
Well, and then he takes out the majority of the white supremacists with a machine gun.
Oh, yeah.
And then he also, you know, he is, despite the fact that he's absolutely terrified, does get that helmet to the, you know, the location, and also has to have this additional emotional trauma on top of it. And, you know, the only reason he doesn't quite pull it off is because he was sort of caught in the middle of the act, but he almost did. So, I mean, in a lot of, and even like towards the end where he crawls to Adebayo and gives her the helmet to help out, you know, Chris. So like in the end, like if you really think about it, the true person who made the end happen, who saved the day in a lot of ways, was Economist. And I think the saddest part of the whole series is what happens to him at the end. You know, like everybody else sort of has this thing going on, you know, you have Peacemakers running around with Vigilante happily blowing up shit. I mean, it's not happy, but Harcourt's recovering, and you know that her and Chris are developing a little more of a friendship there. And, you know, Adebayo's happily reunited with her wife, and the implication is that, you know, she's probably going to get some serious shit from her mom. But, you know, they're reunited, they're going to build their life again together. And then there's poor Economist who's going back to his job in this dark room in the prison. And, you know, just being happy that he has this little picture of this moment where he had camaraderie and friendship, and I just want to cry.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much dirt he got in that broken leg when he was dragging? Right? Oh, I hadn't thought about that yet. That's cringy. Ooh.
Yeah.
But I'm sure
everybody sleep good.
To circle back a little bit, like, you know, the fact that he had the white supremacists being so realistic and very, but he also made it very clear that they were really the bad guys and fucking evil as hell.
Right.
There's no question of that in the story, which is why I liked it a lot. And it made it that much more edifying when they were decimated. Yep. It was like, the only thing that I kind of had a moment where it'd been great if Detective Song had been able to kill him or beat him up first, because but I loved how she gave as good as she got, or even better, when he would start insulting her. I love
I'm running out of white dudes.
Yeah. Calls him a fork, you know. That translates to my haircut looks like donkey took a shit on my head, you know.
So good.
It was so good.
I like the banter that she had with her partner too, Detective Song, and her partner.
Yeah, that dude's been in stuff, and we couldn't figure out what else we'd seen him.
He's in a lot of, he's been.
This is probably going to out me a little bit, but I am a sucker for cozy murder mysteries, and he's actually been in several of those. But I also found out that he had actually auditioned for the part of Shaggy and was in the running. And then when he auditioned for the part of Fitzgibbons, James Gunn remembered him and was like, "Yeah, that's him. We're doing him for Fitzgibbons."
That's awesome. That's awesome. But okay, so let's wrap this up. So final thoughts on Peacemaker. Where do we think?
Watch Suicide Squad first.
Yeah.
You go back, you watch Suicide Squad again.
Yeah.
And then you jump right into Peacemaker. It's seamless.
And any predictions on what you want to see for next season?
I want to see Batmite. And some of these other like ridiculous, obscure characters, you know, that he talks about.
I want to see Kite Man and Condiment Man.
And I want to see Jason Momoa have relations with a dolphin. Even pretend, you know. Just.
I mean, he is kind of single now, so maybe it might happen.
They got back together.
Supposedly that was a deleted scene, right?
I don't know. I'm not
sure. With Aquaman effing a fish?
Oh, from this series?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
Wow.
They made a pretty strong remark about it at the end of The Flash. It's like, no, that's not a rumor.
So, Jenna, what's your final thoughts on everything here?
I completely agree. Watch Suicide Squad, then watch this. And it's phenomenal. It's just really well written, excellent dialogue. The fact that James Gunn had enough sense to let his actors do what they could. The fact that just the amazing interplay where you have this comedic stuff happening and this weird like interplay where like, you know, the weirdest shit will be said and like the actors will still be able to maintain composure and be like, okay, and then move on to the next thing. But it's actually the nice treatment of how you're handling different personality types and understanding that like there's things you call out and things you just move past. You know, like you call out anything that's hate speech, you walk past just weird ass fucking opinions. It's beautiful, really, in a lot of ways. It's just the growth of it and the fact James Gunn had said that really what Peacemaker is a person, it's a man being crushed by his own ideals. And you see that at the beginning and you see the weight beginning to be lifted from it. And it's a very, I mean, it sounds stupid to say, but it really is a very beautiful story when you follow it, despite the fact that James Gunn likes to have things take over people's brains and bodies in a lot of his movies, which is, at least was not gross like the slugs from Slither. The butterflies were pretty.
That is true. But it's very fitting in our wonderful show of What the Fuck Did I Just Watch?
The butterflies were beautiful. I will say that. When I laid eyes on one, I was like, they're so pretty.
But I want to thank you, Russ and Pixie, for joining us. You know, it's always fun to have guests. So anybody interested, you know, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have Twitter. Reach out to us and join us. It's a lot of fun. We do a lot of silly stuff, and you know, we got the kitty cat right behind you joining us too.
That's me. Yeah, he was waiting. Wait
So,
for the spotlight moment.
All right, Jenny, let's give this final outro.
I'm Jenny. There's John Paul. We were joined by Pixie and Russ, and this has been What the Fuck Have I Just Watched? Have a good night, everyone.
You have been listening to
What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube at WTF Did I Just Watch? Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll join us again soon.